This is not my experience, but my grandmother's. The significance is that she told me on my 12th birthday in 1967, before the phenomenon was known to the general public. She hadn't read about it in any book. She wanted me to know about it so I would remember it if anyone I'd meet in the future had a similar thing happen to them. But she told me not to tell anyone about it then, because people would think she was crazy. At the time I did wonder if she crazy. The term near-death experience hadn't been invented yet. It would be many years before I would learn that she had told me has classic elements of NDE. My grandmother's NDE happened in April of 1959. I must give a bit of background events that led up to that evening. My parents married too young due to pregnancy. I was their second child. The first had died of pneumonia. So my parents moved in with my grandparents at the insistence of my grandmother, who felt she needed to watch over me. By the time I was 2 years old my young mother became ill. After 6 months of misdiagnosis, a doctor discovered she had a rare terminal disease and gave her 6 months to live. She died when I was 3. In the midst of these tragedies, my father drank heavily to the extent that he could not control it without help. 6 months after my mother died, he was going to AA meetings and taking antabuse, a drug that can be lethal mixed with alcohol. Naturally, my father and grandparents were still in shock. My grandmother had fallen into depression. And in 1959 doctors prescribed a heavy narcotic tranquilizer called phenobarbital or REDS. Marilyn Monroe and a number of other celebrities overdosed on that drug in that era. One day my father became very depressed and my grandmother, not knowing the danger, offered him some of her phenobarbital. He took 3. She took a few and went to her room and went into narcotic sleep around 4 p.m. Shortly she was awakened in a semi-dream state by my father tapping on her bedroom window. It was still light outdoors. His mouth was moving and he was gesturing, trying to communicate, but she heard no sound. Suddenly she felt nausea, like she was about to throw up, and felt a falling sensation. She was falling alone in blackness but shortly she felt she was moving up a tunnel. Then she saw a beautiful light that drew her. She came to stop at a threshold of this light, she could not go through it. She felt the presence of people she'd known that were dead and a greater being. And it felt like pure love and peace in there and she wanted very much to enter. Now she became aware of 3 large beings but she did not see them because they were standing behind her. They told her she could not cross that threshold because she had to go back to raise the boy. When they said this, she remembered me and agreed to go back, though she was sad to leave the light. What happened next is of interest because it smacks of Dante's Divine Comedy, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but seems rare in NDE stories. The 3 beings took her through a journey of levels, where souls were working out different things. She told me that they had blocked the memory of details from waking consciousness. But the memories remained hidden, to be used as a sort of map when she returned. She had never read the Divine Comedy or the Book of the Dead. 29 years later she died. I'd managed her after a stroke for 5 years. The stroke left her with senile dementia. The last week of her life, I visited her in the nursing home, 3 or 4 times. The last visit I brought her to the house that my ex-wife and I were living in, for a Sunday afternoon. All week she was telling me that she was seeing people she'd known in life, but that she could only see parts of them. Due to her stroke, she wasn't able to explain very well. So I don't know whether she meant she could see through them, or literally saw parts. One visit in the nursing home she said she saw her eldest sister. Only this year through an ancestry website, I learned her sister died 1 week before my grandmother did. On a Tuesday night about 2 a.m. my ex-wife and I were awakened by a county sheriff's deputy who escorted us to the hospital. It was a small town in the Midwest and the emergency room was empty except for medical staff. And my grandmother, peacefully dead on the operating table. She had died about an hour earlier.